name is Priya, and I'll be your moderator for this business interview on the topic of business testing. So, before we actually dive into the topic on discussion, could you please introduce yourselves? So, let's begin with Stan and then hear from Sridhar.
Hi, Priya. Yes, my name is Stan Dobbs, and I'm currently a senior business program manager in our commercial systems technology organization, which is in our MCAPS organization, stands for Microsoft Customer and Partner Solutions. And I've also led the business test and release management for our ERP system supporting industry solutions. That division sells and delivers consulting services for our Microsoft enterprise customers.
Thank you,
Okay.
Stan. So my name is Sridhar Kata. I run TruVs Inc. We are a business and technology consulting company. We try to modernize enterprise operations and help them with the latest and greatest technology solutions.
Yes. That's great. Well, for me, it's a great surprise. This is absolutely a surprise for me because I was expecting a typical gray Seattle day. But we have got two brilliant guests right over here to chat about business testing. So let's get started. So, how long have you been working in this industry and how you have come to know each other? And so let's start with Sridhar.
Yeah, I've been a veteran. I have absolutely no hair. I think this is just a way I show. But yeah, so I've been in the industry for almost 30 years. I've been helping multiple customers like Microsoft. I've been associated with Microsoft for almost 20 years. And I knew Stan from a project I was consulting on around 10 years back, and we've been associated professionally since then.
That's great.
And
Uh,
I joined Microsoft as a FTE back in 2015, supporting our um, consulting services division. I've held many roles at Microsoft, starting out as a process engineer, project design lead, capability manager, and end-to-end business architects on multiple projects. I have a prior career background in application development, database design and administration, infrastructure management, and systems architecture. And this prior 20 plus years of information technology experience I've had has enabled me to better collaborate with our engineering partners with my more recent roles working for business groups at Microsoft. I've worked with Sridhar for almost 10 years and most recently been utilizing TruValue for our business testing team that we built out in our group.
That's great. Stan, could you share with us your thoughts on the importance of business testing and how would you actually describe the role of business testing in today's business landscape?
Sure. Um, Typically, engineering is accountable for testing their solutions, um, but we believe more is needed from the business perspective, especially when you have a complex ecosystem like the one that we deal with. Our stakeholders, including operations and finance and field delivery folks, including our peers, BPM managers, need more higher confidence that whenever we are trying to release new system capability that impact mission critical applications, that the confidence is there in the solution. Business ERP systems tend to be very complex, supporting multiple business processes, user personas, etc. And when these ERP systems have multiple integrations and or data dependencies with other corporate systems and including in-house developed tools, the need for end-to-end testing for different business scenarios becomes even more critical so that we can ensure the flow of the data and transitions between multiple processes is both seamless and minimizes our processing time. So business testing is focused on validating that the capabilities delivered by our engineering partners match the acceptance criteria that is documented in our business requirements for each of these business scenarios. So therefore, business testing can be accomplished with one or more of the following types of activities, which we have utilized TruValue over the course of the last 5-6 years to do for us. Such activities that help enable this business testing, including providing feedback during engineering design reviews, providing feedback during our engineering sprint demos, and then validating that the engineering functional integration regression test cases that they execute are successful by verifying the evidence attached to them and the results provided actually match the acceptance criteria that we expect. Additionally, performing user-centric system testing for these documented business test scenarios, performing hands-on user acceptance testing, which is your traditional UAT, and also performing end-user feedback sessions through system demos. That kind of rounds out the overall view of business testing that I see as important. And I'll hand over to Sridhar and get his thoughts as well.
Yeah, so business testing is from when we work with enterprise customers, they deal with business operations, right? Business operations are like heart of the business, right? They have to be like really functioning smoothly. And when you are introducing a new business system, it creates change. It creates a lot of change, not only in the tools, but people and processes too. So we have to test them in real time before we go to production. It's not just a system part which we are testing.
Right.
We are also testing operations, people, their behaviors, and all those things. So especially in a field-centric environment, let's say you are deploying a system for the field, then it becomes more important that they are involved and their feedback is incorporated, and it becomes a wholesome testing rather than a fragmented testing.
But we also want to ensure that we frame up and plan for those business test scenarios that are relevant for the capability that we are releasing, so that we can focus the energy and the time is well spent ensuring that we're providing the right and the adequate test coverage as well. Because testing is intensive and does utilize precious time of billable resources. So we want to minimize the time they spend, but maximize the coverage that we can get, which requires that planning up front and the understanding of the business and those business test scenarios, which unfortunately our engineering partners do not quite have that understanding of the business to be able to plan for that.
Yeah, I will add a point here. It is difficult for them to understand this business scenario engineering because they are focused on developing the system. So their interaction with the business will be, much lesser. And not only that, engineers tend to focus in one system and they know that system really well. But when it comes to interaction with other system, combining other system, it may be a challenge. So there are all these complexities, especially in a complex ecosystem, it means that business testing is very important before you actually operationalize it in production.
Let's move on with the next question, guys. Yeah. So, Stan, according to you, is there a distinction between business testing and business validation testing, so or popularly known as BVT? And what are business scenarios according to
BVT is a component of business testing. Business testing is the whole process end to end around the business conducting any kind of testing in our tooling ecosystem. Business testing can be testing processes, white box testing, and not necessarily just the hands-on validation of the functionality. So when we talk about BVT, we're speaking specifically around the validating that the engineering results match the acceptance criteria, and that can be accomplished in multiple ways. And it can include end user feedback sessions and demos, and it can also be your classic user acceptance testing with hands-on, with with our actual stakeholders doing the actual hands-on testing. But the different ways that we perform BBT includes the after engineering has executed and passed their test cases, we can review the attached results, the screenshots, the reports, and other documented inputs and outputs as evidence attached and validate that evidence is as expected. Or we can also do manual hands-on execution of those same test cases and confirm that the results from a user-centric perspective is also meeting the acceptance criteria that we provided in our business requirements. So it can be a combination of critical review of outputs that are attached, or it could be an actual manual execution of that. And typically a combination of both is warranted. Now, different, like when we talk about what are the business scenarios should be the various combinations of different business what ifs, boundary conditions, and maybe even exception scenarios for a particular feature or capability. And that could be variables that go into the particular feature. For example, we do a lot of invoicing to our customers. We can invoice on an actuals time and material basis, or we can invoice a customer on a fixed fee billing perspective based off of completed milestones. Those are two different business scenarios. But when we look at business scenarios, we also want to look at it from an end-to-end perspective. So then we take these various business scenarios and we stitch them together into what we call an end-to-end business test scenario that encompasses multiple processes, multiple systems, and multiple variables as we work through that end-to-end business test scenario.
Very well explained. I was going to actually bring up a billing scenario, and you said invoicing, they're one and the same, right? So you start almost from creation of a deal, what we call as deal in our systems, and then actually to the delivery of the deal and receiving the cash from the customer. It's like end-to-end process. So anything can be impacted. So it is important that, let's say there is a change in one of the systems, it's not enough to just test one system sometimes. Sometimes you have to do end-to-end. So that is very relevant, Stan. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. So bringing on to the next question. So with business stakeholders being so occupied, Stan, so how can they actually ensure that the proper testing is carried out?
We chose years back to remove the burden of the test activities, the business validation testing activities from our capability managers and owners, and build out a center of excellence core team of true value vendors who were trained up and in both the business processes end to end, as well as the tooling end to end, to centralize the business validation test activities. That way, we were able to ensure a core set of individuals could provide the planning and the execution of our BBT testing without burdening business stakeholders having to understand all the systems and all the processes to be able to execute BBT themselves. Now, the activities and the different roles and responsibilities that this centralized BBT test team had included not just execution of the testing, but documenting our end-to-end business test scenarios, including detailed narratives, the data setup requirements, the execution steps, and the expected outcomes. This team also participated in the engineering design reviews and demos so that we can help inform with these business test scenarios a better design. They participated with the validating the results of the functional and integration tests that were passed by engineering to ensure that they were passed successfully. Very often our engineering folks will pass test cases, even though the results are not accurate. The fact that they are able to complete the test without an error sometimes to them means that it's successful when the output itself, unless you have a critical eye to review the results, it may not actually be accurate. And then this team would also execute the end-to-end business test case scenarios. And as part of that, the efforts around logging defects, attending daily triages, working with our engineering analysts and devs to replicate and help resolve, conducting the regression testing for any code fixes, and closing these defects once resolved and verified. In addition to all the execution, we utilize this team to plan, schedule, and execute end user feedback sessions, which involve documenting, uploading test cases into our test suite, providing end users with correct security provisioning, creating test data, and tracking the feedback and logging defects when identified. And to help make this even a better process, where possible, TruValue also utilized test automation and RPA to help reduce the time required to create the test data and other manual activities that were more repetitive.
Yes.
Thank you, Stan.
Thank you, Stan. Yeah. So this is basically an age-old issue, whether the testing should fall under the purview of developers or business stakeholders. So what's your perspective on this, Stan? So let's start with Stan and then hear from Sridhar.
Well, engineering is accountable to test their code, their solutions, and they do focus on unit, functional, and integration testing. But our engineering teams will typically work in verticals or silos around their area without the understanding of the upstream and downstream dependencies. And they don't always understand the real life business scenarios, which fall outside that what we call the happy path. And these real life business scenarios that can be exceptions or edge cases or the what ifs and the non-happy path tend to be the rule rather than the exception. Especially when you're dealing with very large, complex ERP systems. Microsoft is a multinational corporation operating in over 100 different countries around the world, and the complexities that brings forth are quite extensive. So incorporating boundary conditions, exception scenarios, and what ifs into the end-to-end business test scenarios will result in a better test plan and test coverage. But that requires understanding the business and understanding those business scenarios, which our engineering partners, frankly, that's not their job. And it's the business that understands those scenarios best because they live and breathe it every day. So planning for and executing for these, once the design is locked and the solution is delivered, is too late. And quite often, that's when the testing is that's when the integration or end-to-end testing by engineering happens, when it's too late. So from my perspective, I've always been a believer about a shift left concept, where we should be incorporating testing mindset earlier in the development process. So end-to-end business test scenarios should be considered in the business requirements up front, meaning that as we provide those and document those requirements, we should also be documenting the business scenarios for which they're applicable for, and then provide that to our engineering partners so that could be considered and baked into their design. Additionally, planning and documenting for these end-to-end business test scenarios early can influence, like I said, not only a robust design, but also influence the test plan and preparation for when engineering will be doing the end-to-end testing. So therefore, it requires a collaborative partnership between business and engineering to ensure that this is understood earlier in the process and not later.
I have nothing to add here, right? I think Stan covered it, so I think he covered it well, and it's not like just one minor point is that engineering is is built to do a particular job really well, and without the proper collaboration with business, we there is no complete solution, right? That's
Right.
what Stan is stretching and stressing, and I think I agree with Stan very well.
Yeah. And
That
I
is
do want to also emphasize that a lot of engineering testing, especially when they're utilizing automation, is testing via the APIs and the function calls and SQL scripts and basically the testing behind the scenes and not what we call user-centric testing, where business users are utilizing the tools and the user interfaces and their security roles were based on how they're provisioned and controls and things like that. So a user-centric testing focus helps to identify issues that are non-functional, security-related, or usability defects that engineering standard ways of testing do not typically identify.
Thank you, Stan. That was really a great insight. But when it comes to the future of testing, Stan, so what are your thoughts around it? And do you actually anticipate increased use of RPA and AI in the testing process? And have you utilized these tools in your own projects? So let's start with Sridhar, then followed by Stan.
Yeah, I think RPA is changing the way testing is done. We have used RPA, one of Stan's project, another project in Microsoft. And I'll give you an example of one case study where it saved a lot of efforts from manual testing. We are talking about thousands of uh, test cases which needed to be used and delivered and tested across multiple geographies, right? They have different languages, different nuances in each, but end-to-end process was almost same. So there was no point using manual resources there because there's nothing specific with respect to the creation of test data, which is only was accomplished in the past do using manual testers, and these are very expensive because they need to know all these systems, right? So now we with RPA we were able to not only cut down the test data creation time, but the quality of test data was really good, and we could just focus on the business users should just focus on validating the outputs rather than worrying about going through 100 plus screens for each test case, right? So that saved a lot of time, a lot of money, and not only time and money, the quality of testing has drastically improved, right? So I think RPA is going to really change the way the testing is done, especially in UI automation testing, and all that. But there's coupled with RPA, if you can use machine learning and AI, you could do much more complex scenarios. We haven't done that honestly, but I think there is a potential for RPA and AI to come together. What industry calls as intelligent automation or hyper automation. Using that, we could do solve much more complex technological problems.
Yes, yes. Stan,
Eh,
would you like to share your insights here?
Yeah, I kind of want to iterate on what Sridhar was saying, and I agree as well that the use of test automation is most relevant to the preparation of test data and to reduce the time and effort of the manual repetitive tasks, especially when we're trying to prepare test data for end user feedback and other UAT sessions. We've utilized a lot of test automation using bots and engineering developed models that can help automate that. We have not yet incorporated any actual AI models for test automation, but it's a growing area and one that would be very interested in utilizing at some point. But I do want to also try to call out that AI models are also very expensive and do require maintenance and effort to not only develop them but also maintain them. One area that test automation has been most successful for us is with regression testing, and the ability to, once we've identified a new business scenario that we've implemented, is to enhance our test automation suites to incorporate those business scenarios, those end-to-end business scenarios, and automate them in a new regression test suite. So that way, if we do introduce new capability, our automation test suites, if there's any regression issues, will catch those without any additional manual effort to identify them.
Yes. That actually comes back to my next question, talking about the regression. So when it comes to testing in general, there are basically various types of testing to consider, which includes functional and regression, automation, and performance testing. But as a business stakeholder, which testing types do you find most critical and relevant for your needs? Stan.
I believe our end-to-end business scenario testing is the most vital, because it takes real-world business scenarios and confirms that from an end-to-end perspective, the processes from a user-centric perspective, utilizing the functionality will work end-to-end. The data will flow properly, the transactional capability will be correct, and the output from reporting, et cetera, will also be correct. These complex ERP systems usually rely on tightly integrated between multiple systems, modules, tools, reporting, data analytics, et cetera. And without that end-to-end business scenario testing, it's possible something can fail between an upstream and a downstream system. And coupling that with user-centric testing, where we can ensure proper user experience, security, controls, et cetera, are also working, is the combination of those two, I think, is the most critical for the business.
Yes. Yes, I completely agree with you. And I think that was great. Thank you so much, Stan and Sridhar, for helping us understand more about business testing. And so, but now I would like to summarize our session of briefly. So I could say that we have talked really lot about what is actually business testing, how it actually includes in the business scenarios, how it actually being implemented. And we have also talked about how it actually complements engineering testing. And we have talked briefly about the role of RPA and AI in testing. And I could see the future being implemented through RPA and AI from your word of insights. So we also talked a bit about the types of testing. So I really hope I concluded it right. But
Yes, you
thank you
did.
so much once again, Stan and Sridhar, for your insights.
You're welcome.
It's so pleasure talking with you.
Thank you so much, Priya. Thank you, Stan. Have a
Yeah.
good rest
Yeah,
of the
you're
day.
welcome. Thank you.